All right, welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right in, shall we? Today, we're unpacking a story that is, honestly, a masterclass in suspense. It blends deep psychological trauma with a really profound social message. We're looking at the legend of Purani village and its infamous Purani Haveli, literally, the old mansion. Now, at first glance, this seems like your classic haunted house setup, right? You've got this beautiful, quiet little village, but right smack in the middle sits this sprawling, incredibly eerie mansion that the locals absolutely refuse to go near. I mean, they won't even look at it. The whole place is just dripping with mystery and dread, and there's this terrifying lore that's kept everybody away for decades. But, as we're gonna see, the real ghost in the story, they aren't supernatural at all. To really grasp the gravity of this place, you've gotta listen to the locals. In the source material, there's this scene where two villagers are caught in a brutal, freezing hailstorm, desperately looking for shelter. One of them points to the Haveli, and the other guy absolutely refuses. He basically says, look, I'd rather get pelted by hail all night than take a single step inside that place. And when they do manage a quick peek inside, they spot this mysterious, disheveled old woman with wild white hair just pacing in the shadows, endlessly rambling to herself. I mean, just that visual alone sends them running for their lives. That absolute, undeniable terror from the locals, that sets the foundation for everything we're about to talk about. But here's where it gets really interesting, the sheer contrast in how people see this place. Just as we're settling into this vibe of pure terror, the narrative throws us a major curveball. Enter Rajiv, Ria, Raman, and Prem. These four are confident, city-dwelling newcomers who roll into town claiming they're the rightful heirs to the Haveli, and they are here to sell it. The village chief tries to warn them, telling them about the haunted rumors and the terrifying old woman. But these four, they could not care less. They walk up to the Haveli and they don't see a cursed, dilapidated nightmare. No, they see thick walls, grand architecture, and, most importantly, absolute dollar signs. To them, it's a royal palace that's going to fetch millions. It is such a brilliant contrast, pitting this visceral, deep-seated local dread right up against blinding modern greed. So completely brushing off the warnings, the newcomers push their way inside, swatting away bats and just braving this incredibly creepy atmosphere. And it doesn't take long before they run right into the source of the village's nightmares, the rambling old woman. But here's the thing, she doesn't act like a ghost. When they confront her, she suddenly snaps back that she's there for a reason. She claims she's guarding a hidden, forgotten treasure. Man, the second she drops the word treasure, the newcomer's greed just goes into overdrive. Selling the real estate is instantly out the window. Now they want the gold. It's a fantastic hook, right? Like, what on earth is this woman actually guarding in a rotting mansion? Well, the newcomers immediately kick off this frantic, obsessive treasure hunt. First, they spend 4 grueling hours just tapping on walls, scouring the main floors, and nothing. They find absolutely nothing. They leave, but that greed, it is highly contagious. So the very next day, they're back. And this time, they've brought over 100 eager villagers with them, all promised a slice of the pie. The search goes into high gear. Finally, they hit the jackpot. Out in the ruined back section of the Haveli, buried under this heavy pile of rubble, they spot an oddly placed stone. They pry it away, and boom, it reveals a set of hidden stairs plunging straight down into a dark, damp, spiderweb-infested basement. I mean, the anticipation here is literally off the charts. Down in the suffocating darkness of that hidden basement, with everybody just using their cell phone flashlights to see, they find it. A massive, heavy, old iron trunk. With the villagers' help, they haul this thing up into the daylight. And the moment the old woman lays eyes on it, her entire demeanor flips. She just erupts into this ecstatic, almost manic joy, screaming out that her treasure has finally been found. For the newcomers, this is it. This is the moment their greed pays off. They're ready to pop this trunk open, fully expecting to see gold, jewels, you name it, just unimaginable wealth. But instead of riches, this is what they actually find. The heartbreaking remains of an infant, a child's skeleton. It completely pulls the rug out from under the characters, and honestly the audience too. In a split second, the tone shifts from this exciting, greed-fueled treasure hunt into a profoundly shocking, horrifying reality. The newcomers physically recoil in terror, but the old woman? She instantly drops to the ground, pulling the trunk to her chest, and just weeps uncontrollably. It is such a deeply emotional reveal that forces us to reframe literally everything we've heard so far, because suddenly we realize this isn't a story about hidden gold at all. It's a story about a deeply hidden tragedy. So we have to unpack exactly how this tragedy unfolded. The old woman, whose name we learn is Gowrie, finally reveals her horrific backstory. Years and years ago, Gowrie was a young bride who gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. But she was living in a deeply patriarchal household, and her husband and father-in-law were furious. Driven by this extreme, toxic superstition, they actually consulted a tantric who demanded the newborn be sacrificed so they could be blessed with a son. It's horrific. That very night, down in that dark basement, they murdered the infant. The sheer grief of it completely shattered Gowrie's mind. In a violent, desperate retaliation, she killed everyone involved. The husband, the father-in-law, even the servants. Afterwards, she just stayed down in that basement with her child's body. Eventually, years later, the roof caved in, sealing off the stairs and trapping her on the upper floors, completely severing her from her child, until today. When you hear Gowrie's heartbreaking words to her baby, it really captures the profound reality of her delusion. Her mind simply couldn't process the sheer trauma of the infanticide, so it did the only thing it could. It built a protective delusion. She had locked her baby's remains in that iron trunk and treated it as her absolute most prized possession. To Gowrie, you see, she wasn't hoarding a box of bones. She was endlessly protecting her sleeping child from a world that only wanted to harm her. This revelation completely humanizes the so-called terrifying ghost of the Haveli. She was never a monster haunting a house. She was a severely traumatized mother, trapped in a perpetual state of grief. And Rajiv's reaction to all of this? It perfectly illustrates the massive moral divide at the center of the story. Completely blinded by his own disappointment, he actually kicks the trunk in disgust, yelling that it's nothing but rotting bones. It's wild. On one side, you have the raw, undeniable greed and just a complete lack of empathy from these newcomers. And on the flip side, you have Gowrie, throwing her own body over the trunk. Her fierce, albeit deeply disturbed, maternal instinct flares right back up to protect her child's remains from being disrespected by these strangers. Well, the second Rajiv disrespects her child, Gowrie snaps. She grabs the trunk, sprints deeper into the Haveli, and the newcomers, foolishly, chase right after her. But they forget one crucial detail. Gowrie knows this mansion inside and out, and she has spent years preparing for intruders. What follows is this incredibly fast-paced sequence of retribution. Rajiv steps onto a carpet and immediately plummets into a hidden pit. Rhea charges into a room, only for the door to slam shut behind her as literally hundreds of rats swarm out of the woodwork. Prem tries to sprint down a hallway and violently wipes out on a floor slicked with oil. It is almost like a dark psychological twist on Home Alone traps. Gowrie brilliantly and ruthlessly punishes these greedy intruders who dared to trample into her sanctuary.
All this chaos finally draws in the rest of the villagers, who manage to subdue Gowrie and call the cops. And this right here is where we get our final twist. When the authorities show up, the newcomers start demanding that Gowrie be arrested for attacking them in, quote-unquote, their Haveli. So the police casually ask to see the ownership papers, and suddenly, Rajiv and his crew start stammering. They've got nothing, absolutely nothing. The truth completely spills out. They are scammers. They just heard the local rumors about an abandoned mansion, and they plan to fake the ownership, clear out the crazy lady, and flip the property to a foreign buyer for a massive payday. Their true colors are totally exposed, and the police rightfully arrest all 4 fraudsters right on the spot.
With the scammers hauled away and the terrible truth of the Haveli finally laid bare, the tone becomes really resolute, really reflective. The village, people who had lived in mortal fear of this mansion for years, are profoundly moved by Gowrie's tragic story. They finally realize that the horrors inside that house weren't some supernatural curse, but a terrible, very human crime rooted in superstition. So, led by a villager named Ramu, the entire community comes together to finally do what should have been done decades ago. They carefully, respectfully take the infant's remains and perform the proper, traditional last rites, giving this innocent child the dignified farewell she was so brutally denied. Now, Gowrie is safely moved to a psychiatric facility so she can finally get the professional care she needs. But the story doesn't stop there. The villagers refuse to let the Haveli fall back into ruin. Instead, they do something amazing. They completely transform it. They take the very site of this terrible misogynistic trauma and turn it into a beacon of empowerment. The old mansion is fully renovated and reopens as the Gowrie Kanya Vidyalaya, the Gowrie Girls' School. Right outside, they place a plaque that simply reads, "In memory of a mother." It is such a powerful symbol. A place where a female child was once murdered simply for her gender is now a dedicated institution actively working to educate and empower young girls, wiping out the dark superstitions of the past. Which brings us to a final thought. and it's something I really want you to chew on for a bit. The story of Purani Haveli reminds us that the real monsters in our world are so often the societal evils we turn a blind eye to, things like greed, superstition, and cruelty. But crucially, it also proves that redemption is possible. So how do we, within our own communities, take our darkest histories, our spaces of profound trauma, and actually transform them into foundations for future healing and empowerment? It's an incredible lesson in karmic justice and the enduring power of education. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this story stays with you as long as it has with me. Keep asking questions and keep learning.